Thank you, Warren. But when you always come across as a person who can knows his offenders, and I will take your recommendation into consideration. Uh, Mr. Jagan, I will get him a soapbox right now. I've been at this job for 7 years. A person with no criminal history, with a supervision history such as yours,
Yes, sir.
I would consider unsuitable the commutation of sentence. You have over 25 or 30 arrests and convicted of 3 felonies. But I have to take in consideration your performance while you've been incarcerated.
Yes, sir.
So this has been a very difficult week for me. I have 2 cases pretty much similar. And I have to use the scale of justice and make it balance. And it's been difficult, but I will make a decision. And I will try to be as fair and just all parties involved. You do have law enforcement opposition, you do have some victim opposition. And I will take all of that in consideration, along with your service as a hospice volunteer. But I have to put into the mix that Carol's criminal history and supervision history. And I will make a recommendation at the end of this hearing. Madam Chairman, I really have not come up with a decision in Mr. Yeager's case, and I'd like to call for an executive session at the end of this hearing to discuss confidential matters with other members of the board.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Mr. Freeman's question.
What is going to be your sobriety plan when you get out? How are you going to stay sober? I see you have a bad problem with alcohol.
Yes, sir, I did. Still do. My intentions are, if I'm blessed enough by this board to get home, a few times a week, I'm going to try to, be in any of the classes that they have out there. And, whatever, stay in church and, go to the classes and, do my best to, just stay positive. And definitely not do any drinking or any kind of drugging. It was just a bad mixture for me, that was for sure. And it cost a lot of people. And like I said, I look back on it and I'm so very ashamed, and I feel for the people that I've caused this to, not just these victims this time, but every one of them. And I plan on staying in any classes that they got, in Mississippi.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, and I failed to recognize your son, Josh, who's joined us by phone. I see you're in your vehicle. Josh, we'd like to hear from you if there's something you'd like us to know.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Dan.
All right. Is there anything you want me to ask? I mean, you want to ask me, or just you want me to speak?
No, I just want you to speak and tell us what you'd like us to know about your father.
All right. Before my dad got sent to prison, I had, great memories being with him, fishing and stuff with my brother and holidays, and someone trying to teach me how to be a man. And I lost all that around 7 years old when he got sent to prison. I realized at that age he made some bad decisions, and that's why he's away from us. It was hard growing up without my dad, only seeing him through, glass windows and short phone calls. And then he got sent to Angola, and I was a little older by then, so I kind of knew what that place was, and I was worried for him, going to a place like that, what could they, turn him into. And a couple years in there, I hear that he's got a degree and his bachelor's degree and all that, and how well he was doing. And he could have went down a very different road in that place, and I'm grateful that he did, and the choices he's made since he's been in there, and it's led to this day right here. I'm just very proud of him, no matter how this turns out today. He's a good man, and I hope to have him out here with me one day, and his granddaughters get to know him, and I'm just proud of him. He's turned his life around, and I hope he gets to show that to y'all. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional over here.
That's okay, Josh. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share that with us. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for allowing me to.
We're going to hear from I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Eileen's.
Yes.
Can we hear from Mrs. Eileen first? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank y'all. On behalf of our friend Bobby Daggers, I like to tell you that we did not know Bobby 25 years ago. We know what's on paper. We know we've read his court transcripts. We know his record, but we didn't know him. But I can tell you that we know who he is today. We have known him for over 10 years, and we know the man he's become. We know that, sorry, I have my notes here, forgive me. We know that he has worked incredibly hard and taken every opportunity that has been given to him to turn his life around and become a better person. As you said, he went from a ninth grade education to a dropout to having his Bachelor of Arts degree in Christian ministry. He's earned several certifications in different trades. He's gone through every sort of chemical and dependency NAA. I don't know if he mentioned that. I think he's actually led some of those programs to help other people do better and not have to go through exactly what he's gone through. And I think most importantly to Bobby is that he was accepted into the hospice program that the Louisiana Department of Correction offers, and has been able to help people at the end of their life transition from this world to the next, and that is so vital. And of course, he didn't do all this on his own. Our hats are off to the Louisiana Department of Corrections for all of the programs that y'all offer. It's incredible. It is not just helping these men on trades, but it is giving them a feeling of accomplishment and self-worth that they probably have never had. And that's incredible. And so y'all are doing a standard. But I think the biggest transition for Bobby, and if you're around him for more than 5 minutes, you'll realize this, that he has been transitioned into a Christ-filled, Christ-following man. And that is so a part of his very being. Now you have the package, you've read everything out, you know the letters that he has, that so the change that he's had has not gone unnoticed. But as you said, I think that the most important letters that you'll find in that packet, they're not typed out. They're on scraps of notebook paper and on the backs of envelopes, and this is from the men who have served with him, walked beside him, slept 3 feet from him. And they are from young men that call him a father figure. And these are from people who have never known their fathers. They call him a mentor. I mean, one in there talks about an elderly man who's been in there for decades, how Bobby has helped him keep his wheelchair working so he can have some dignity in being able to be mobile. This is just a little of the man that we have come to know. And we feel so strongly about this that we are willing to take him, to Mississippi. We have a job for him. We have a home for him. We have a church family for him. You mentioned about the substance abuses. We have that arranged. We know people that are going to be taking care of that. We are prepared to give him everything that he will need, because we know it's a different world out there than what he's used to. And we are prepared to help him transition from the institutional life that he has lived for the last 22 years into a life where he can become a productive member, a producing member of a free society. Thank y'all so much. Again, we do not diminish where he was. We just know where he is. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, give the opportunity. On behalf of volunteers, yes, I heard what he did. He bad things. Terrible past. He's been serving for 25 years. But in the process, he developed a lot of skills, education, and on the way, helped a lot of people at business and even outside. I'm going to give you a small example. One of our sons was getting into bed, was having adulting issues. I think the parents will all know what those can be. And some of his friends and some other kids in the community, most of them met boys. Okay? And they started getting involved. Or we talked to them, we wrote them letters, gave his testimony. And I can count 5 or 6 kids, they really turned around to enjoy school or learning their grades and just grew up. So some people, it takes a longer time. Sometimes they have to be 30-year-old grow. Okay? Sometimes it can grow up at 20, sometimes at 18. So I think Mr. Jack just grew up at 30-year-old. But now he has skills, he has support and education. The biggest issue somebody gets out of prison would be not having those things and getting back in trouble. But if he has that, I think he will do fine. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. At this time, Mr. Jaggers, is there a statement you'd like to make before we turn it over to your attorney to wrap it up for us?
Yes, ma'am, there is. First, I would like to apologize to my victims, Mr. Vance, Ms. Clark, and Mr. Willie Lane. And if they do get a chance to see this, I just want them to know how sorry I am for the trauma that I caused them and their families. And I just hope that, with time or whatever, they can find some type of forgiveness for me, because, if this would happen to my family or to my mother or, my children, or, it would have affected me greatly. And I feel for them. I have empathy for them. And I'm truly, truly sorry from the bottom of my heart for you doing what I've done to them when they never deserved it. And not only to them, Ms. Renata, but, to the state itself for doing the things that I've done, trying to grow up to where I was at. And I just wanted y'all to know that with the time that I have, if I am granted this clemency, I will be able to go home and to help someone. But if not, all I can do is just keep growing and continue taking my classes and helping the people here or wherever I'm at. And I just wanted to let y'all know just how ashamed I was for the things that I've done through my life. And hearing it sounded horrible. It sounded like a movie, someone else. It doesn't sound like the person that I am today. And I'm truly, truly remorseful for the things that I've done to my victims, to my family, to my friends, to the state itself. And I just wanted to let y'all know that if I am granted this clemency today, that I'm going to continue my educational programs, my schooling through NA, or whatever's offered out there. I don't know. It's been a long time, almost 25 years since I've been out. And jail has really saved my life. You know, if I would have stayed out there, I'm sure that I would have probably been dead right now. So, you know, I'm grateful for me coming to jail. I know that sounds crazy, but if I hadn't have, I'm sure that it probably would have killed me. So with that being said, I really appreciate each and every one of y'all. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson? So you see it's all? Go ahead.
I did see Judge Mirabel. Judge Craig asked me to tell you a little about what each one of these law firms. You know, I joked with Miss Helene before we came in that this was over with, whatever the result, I was gonna put her on my payroll, and I was joking, but I may actually try to hire her. Not often I get upstage, but I don't think I can follow her act very well, but we'll try. But I wouldn't have come here this morning to lobby for a commutation of sentence or clemency on behalf of the Bobby Jaggers that Mr. Roche was reading out the criminal history of. In fact, when we took this case a long time ago, when I met the Leans and they wanted me to help Bobby, and I actually spoke with Warden Goodwin back then, and he said, you know, Bobby's a good guy, he's a good inmate. And I got to say, for Warden Goodwin to make him a trustee with, I think, at least 2 simple escapes on his record, shows the confidence that he has in the kind of person that Bobby is. And Bobby, I think, has worked off of the side of David Wade when they've had storm damage from tornadoes or high winds or whatever. He's actually left compound and gone and helped the community, gotten trees out of roadways and what have you. And then I think his record as an inmate is exemplary with regard to write-ups. I thought he had 7 write-ups when we were going over this being out last week. I think they were all for minor infractions, nothing that was serious. It is also rare that, and Mr. Roche spoke about the opposition. I actually went and spoke to Judge Self, who had opposed the clemency application because he was in that division at the time. He was contacted by Mr. Dupree from the Erie Drive Probation Parole Office. He said, look, I had to oppose him because of his addictions and his record. Same thing with Mr. Marvin. I went and sat down with him. He said, he calls me Jim for some reason. I've never heard known why. He says, Jim, he said, I don't think I can get on board with a guy with this record. So again, actions have consequences. I spoke with Judge Mike Narin, who was actually Bobby's lawyer back in the late 90s and 98 when this happened in 2000, I think, and went to trial and was convicted. And I asked Judge Narin, I said, why did Mike Pittman, who's now also a judge in Cattle Parish, why did he not make a plea offer? He didn't offer anything. And again, Judge Narin said his record. I went and visited with Judge Pittman and he looked at his record. He said, I just can't make an offer. So his record is what got him where he is. And I think what Bobby said at the end is exactly true. We talked about this. He said, you know, it was a blessing to him that he got pulled off the street when he did. He said, I was either going to kill somebody or I was going to be killed. That was where I was headed. And again, he turned his life around tremendously from where he was then, using alcohol and drugs heavily and committing these crimes. And as Mr. Roche went through that criminal history, we went through it when we took him as a client, and my paralegal, who was working for me at the time, said, my gosh, you know, you're going to make an application with this guy's record. I said, the Helene's, one Goodwin, everyone that I talked to, there's a letter from Lieutenant Bobby Roden, who's retired now. He worked at David Wade, was around with Bobby for, I think, over a decade and transported once or twice. And he volunteered to write this letter on his behalf when he knew that he was coming up from for clemency after he left him. So, Warden Kane, we reached out to him at his current position in Mississippi. He may be the only guy, maybe in the history of the country, that had DOC in 2 different states during his lifetime. But he said, I'll write a letter. Well, I was expecting, 1 paragraph. I think he ought to give him some consideration. Of course, you read the letter that he wrote. The letter that Judge Robinson wrote, who was, and I want to say that I think a great deference should be paid to the retired judge who, little humor there because I know that three y'all. And Judge Jackson, last time I was in front of y'all 3 weeks ago, had Mr. Roche's name in front of her, which was, we knew she was not. But I think, Judge Robinson, he's met with Bobby after his incarceration. He's acting in Cairo's prison ministers. And he's seen him and spoken with him, and he told me, look, I will write him a really good letter. And of course, he asked me, as any good judge would do, he said, give me everything that you submitted to the board that you're going to submit to the application. I gave him all the letters, certifications, course completion certificates. And he read through all of that. And he said, I knew Bobby was doing well from seeing Wade. I had no idea that he was doing as well as he ended. Again, the evaluation Dr. Loprano did, I think, basically sets out that Bobby is, I think, no risk, despite this terrible history he had before his incarceration. That at his age now, he and I are the same age, ironically. And when I met with Bobby after he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and I went and met him at Wade after the diagnosis when Celine contacted me and asked because she was concerned, oh my God, we're not going to get in front of the board for something bad happens to Bobby. So I want to talk to him. At that time, he had no idea what, he just knew he had prostate cancer. He didn't know what the prognosis was going to be. And he teared up and told me, the worst thing can happen to me if I die, but I don't want to die without being able to get out and prove to the Lanes and to my son Josh and to my friends and family out there that I really could be a productive member of society if I was ever given the chance. That was the greatest fear when he found out he had cancer. And I think they did surgery, and I think he's going to be fine. He lives a long, healthy life. But I looked at, in preparation for the hearing, and I was worried Judge Marabella was going to be on the panel because I was told by Jim Bourne at the seminar that he hated unprepared lawyers. When I found that outside of the panel, I got even nervous. But this is my first appearance in a commutation. I've done probably 100 parole hearings, never done one of these before. I was looking over everything last night at Capitol Hill from Wednesday night. And one thing I saw in Judge Robinson's letter, he had a statement in the second page. It said, I've always believed the purpose of incarceration by criminal justice system is to punish criminal wrongdoing, number one. And number two, provide criminals with the opportunity to rehabilitate themselves and prepare to re-enter society as productive members of it. I think Bobby Jaggers has been punished for his conduct on the night that all this terrible stuff happened. And luckily and thankfully and prayerfully, all 3 of his victims were not harmed physically in what happened. Now, Ms. Clark, I went and spoke with her and found her at her residence. And, she didn't want to talk about it. And I could tell that she was still disturbed even 20 years later when I told her who I was and why I was there and what I wanted to speak about. It changed her whole demeanor. It affected her in a way that she's never going to forget what happened that night. Mr. Wayne, I actually had one of my associates, now Judge Nally Howell, speak to Mr. Wayne personally, and he had expressed to her he didn't oppose release. Mr. Vance actually Now Judge Howell and I found him walking on the street at his residence, and we came up to him, told, I guess you could say, and he told us then that he didn't have an opposition. Of course, I know he later expressed opposition to investigating. But I actually had an affidavit prepared for him that would have expressed no opposition. He said, well, I don't want to sign anything. Last time I signed something on this guy, I went to jail. And of course, I found out he'd been held as a material witness. He appeared for a court hearing. They went and picked him up and stuck him, which I thought was terrible. Got him addicted. They held him in jail for 2 months until Mr. Jagger's trial. I believe that, again, you know your mission statement. I don't need to tell it to you. I think, and Ms. Salim is absolutely right. And Warden Payne, when we spoke, told me that Mississippi is way behind where we are in Louisiana with respect to programs that are offered. I know Judge Jackson was instrumental in helping to establish the reentry. It's not huge.
That's why I think.
And it's that route.
And Treaty One.
Yeah, true. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I knew I heard one of y'all that seminar 10 years ago about that program in Angola. It was a very good program for those inmates. But I think more than anything else, what speaks to Bobby's character and why I believe he ought to get this opportunity to go back into society is that when he was locked up and incarcerated, he didn't think he was ever going to see daylight and get out. 2 life sentences plus 50 years stacked on top of it. And he could have easily gone, as his son Josh said, down a different path when he hit Angola. But Warden Payne, again, when I spoke with him, was very, very high on Bobby, complimentary of him. And again, wrote a wonderful letter on his behalf. And Warden Goodwin has told me to get him out of this facility if I could. So I guess that's as good a compliment as he could give an inmate. And I think that the letters and the certifications that I furnished to you as part of his package speak themselves. Again, and as Mr. Roche went through these arrests one by one, I remember again when we did the intake on him initially going through it, thinking this is horrible. And it was. And like I said, that Bobby Jaggers, I wouldn't want to see you released back in society. But that's not the Bobby Jaggers that sits in front of you this morning. And I believe that if you give him the opportunity, he will make you proud. And I know that he will make the Helene proud. I told Ms. Dixie if I ever get in trouble, I want her to befriend me as her and Bobby got to be friends. She's a wonderful person, and her husband as well. And I thank you for your consideration.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, at this time, I'd like to call for executive session.
We have a motion for executive session. We have a second by Mr. Freeman. Is there any objection? Hearing none, we'll be in executive session for just a moment to discuss confidential matters. We are prepared to vote. Thank you all for your indulgence. Mr. Roche will be voting first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Yeagers,
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for a difficult week. It's been a difficult week for me. I've read your report 2 or 3 times, and it's just as extensive a criminal history as I've ever seen.
Yes, sir.
You've got out on probation a number of times, and you were back arrested within 1 or 2 months. But I also was privy to your excellent incarceration record.
Yes, sir.
Working with hospice the last 22 years while holding a regular job must have been exhausting. My daughter is a palliative physician. She works with at end of their lives, and I can see the stress on her face at times dealing with people at the end of their life. She does this for a living.
Yes, sir.
They have recommendations from Warden Kane, the sentencing judge, Dr. Robertson, who's the former chancellor of the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary at its campus at Angola. You have earned numerous educational advancements. You have 2 degrees and certification in welding. You have done very well. I had this long drawn out statement, but I'm just going to go ahead and vote. I use the scale of justice of my livelihood for almost 30 years. I was a law librarian. I had a faculty of 60 lawyers and 400 students that thought they were lawyers. So I've dealt with lawyers. Your lawyer has done a good job for you.
Yes, sir.
Our recommendation is that we commute your sentence to 99 years with parole eligibility after serving 27 years. I'm not going to make it immediate simply because of your criminal history and your supervision history. That has to be taken in account when you have such a horrible history. So I think that's over with. And you're going to do very well. My vote is to commute 99 years with parole eligibility after 27 years. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Roche.
Thank
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Jaggers, I've enjoyed your interview. You have some wonderful letters of support, tremendous comments by the warden. You're a low risk. You've accomplished a lot of things while you've been there. Our role is a little different than the judge's role. We all have different roles. We look at what you did and who you are and who you were. And there's no question that your criminal history comes into play.
Yes.
Our job, at least my consideration of our job, is to, while taking those things into account, to determine who you are today and what you've accomplished while you've been in prison. And after reviewing all of those things, my vote today would be to recommend to the governor to commute your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. So that would be my.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Bell. Mr. Frick.
Mr. Jaeger, I mean, your criminal history definitely concerns me. It's just alarming, really, but I'm gonna take a chance on you. due to the warden's comments and the support that you're gonna have. So I'm gonna vote to grant commute to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility, but that you do move to Mississippi. You do interstate back to Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Jagers, I echo the comments of my colleague. You've done an exceptional job over the last 24 years. Really impressed by your interview today. The fact that you have, you know, for me, the true sign of rehabilitation is not the things you do for yourself. It's the things that you do for others. And most of the time you have been incarcerated has been spent doing for others. For me, that's very important. So my vote today would be to recommend a commutation to 99 years with immediate parole.
Thank
All
you.
right, Mr. Jaggers, I was most impressed with the remarks made by Josh and the pride that he has in the work that you've accomplished and the man that you've become. I also was moved by the remarks by Warden Goodwin. You know, we hear from him a lot and we don't ever hear him say all the good things he says about you. I was struck by his remark that he said, you've made a positive impact on the offender population there at that facility. And that speaks volumes to me. So my vote today also is to recommend commutation of your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole. So Jaggers will make a recommendation on your behalf to the Governor Edwards that your sentence be commuted to 99 years and that you be immediately parole eligible. Good luck to you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all. Thank you a lot. I love you, Josh. Love y'all, Dick.
See, all that shaking. And look, you're sweating on the table. Well, wouldn't you think? Good job. Good job.
Well, I thought I was gonna give you some more time, but you got, if the governor signs, if you're eligible immediately.
Not getting any sound.
All right, good morning. Good morning. The pardon board is reconvening. We're at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Today is Monday, October 24th, 2022. It's 11:39 a.m. Would the staff at Angola please introduce yourself for the record?
Deputy Warden Tracy Falgood, Federal Admiral classification.
Carmen Shipley, offender records.
Jody Southern, transition specialist.
And everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So we have quite a few folks who are here in the room with us today, and I think everybody's finally gotten comfortable. But first, let me ask you, Mr. Larry, to introduce yourself. Tell us your name and your DOC number.
My name is Larry Halls, DOC number 341495.
Yes, sir. And you are represented by counsel this morning. Mr. Hamilton, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Bruce Hamilton, and I'm representing Mr. Halls.
So we have here in support Mr. James Pritchford. We have the Parole Project has joined us by phone or by Zoom. Julia Mudd, Gus May, also by Zoom. Your uncle Robert Fry, Jay Jackson, Jan Halls, Edward Ward, Karen Ward, Randy Halls, and Angelo Noah. We also have here in opposition Brett Morrison, Mark Erdy, Amanda Erdy, Cindy Erdy, Tamika White from the DA's office, and Matthew Belzer, also from the DA's office. First, Mr. Halls, I'll just read some identifying information into the record, after which I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Bonnie Jackson, seated to my far left. Your case has been assigned to her, so she'll take the lead on the interview. Then we'll hear from everybody who's indicated they want to speak. You'll be allowed to make a statement at the end before we turn it over to Mr. Hamilton for his presentation and closeout. Okay? Mr. Halls, you understand all that?
Yes, ma'am, I sure do. Thank you.
So you are Larry D. Halls. Your DOC number is 341495. You're seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Tangipahoa Parish in October 1994 for a second-degree murder conviction, and you received a life sentence. Mr. Halls, is that correct information?
That is correct.
Mrs. Jackson?
Good morning, Mr. Halls. It is still morning. My name is Bonnie Jackson. Your case has been assigned to me, so I'll start the questioning for the board. Mr. Halls, how old are you?
65.
And how long have you served on this charge?
I think later this week will have been 30 years from my arrest date.
And so you were approximately 25 years old at the time this crime was committed. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I heard you correctly. I thought you said 25. I was 35.
I'm sorry, you're correct. I misspoke. So the victim in this case was your ex-wife. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How long had the two of you been married before your divorce?
It was a very brief time. I think it maybe a year. We were together about 6 months, and then we had a 6-month separation before the divorce was final.
And how long had you been divorced at the time of her murder?
5 years, approximately. Yeah, 5 years.
So it's been a long time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you and the victim had a son together?
Yes, we did.
And that son was born with cerebral palsy, is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
And as a consequence of that, he was paralyzed, is that correct?
Yes, paralyzed wouldn't be the correct term. He was a quadriplegic. So he had limited function of his arms and legs.
And how old was he at the time of his mother's death?
He was 6.
And who was the primary caretaker for him?
She was, Miss Ann was his mother.
All right. And after her death, who assumed the care for your son?
Gregory's grandmother, Shirley Erdy, Ann's mother.
And Gregory has since passed away, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
When did he pass away?
In 2018.
And how old was he at the time of his death?
I believe he was 32.
And so for over 20 years of his life, his grandparents had to care for him.
It is my understanding that they were the caregivers after Ann's passing.
Well, let's talk about Ann's passing.
All right.
Ann was murdered. Is that correct?
You're breaking in and out just a little bit. Could you repeat that?
You referred to it as her passing, but she was actually murdered.
Yes, yes, ma'am. I'm responsible for her death. I'm
Tell us the circumstances surrounding this crime. Why did you kill your ex-wife, and how?
Yeah, I'm sorry you're breaking out a little bit. I didn't know you had finished, but I understood.
First, I'd like to hear a little bit about the circumstances of the offense, how you killed her, and more importantly, why did you kill her?
All right. Ann and I had somewhat of a contentious relationship. 90% of it revolved around medical bills and insurance forms and taking care of our son.
And stop talking right there. Why was that contentious?
Well, I will explain right now a little bit. For example, there's a wheelchair lift that was involved. We had a court hearing date, a monitoring date. We went to it, and a bill for approximately $7,000 came up for a wheelchair lift, which I was responsible for. So the judge set up a future hearing date, and to pay this bill, I simply had to turn it into my insurance, and I would have paid the residual, but I needed the invoice and from the doctor, a prescription from the doctor, et cetera. And at the conclusion of that hearing date, Ann and I got together, and she was supposed to give me the paperwork. Well, a month drug by, and I'd ask about it, and then I never got anything. A little bit longer, I'd ask again, and I didn't get it. And we were getting close to the hearing date, and this was kind of typical of our relationship, and it all revolved around, or not all, but 90% of it revolved around insurance and paying bills for my son's health care, which I was responsible for. So as this hearing date grew near, I was getting very upset about the situation of always arising and going to court with unpaid bills. So I had went to her beauty shop that day to discuss this with her, and that I needed the paperwork. And what's more, this has been an ongoing, continual piece of problem between she and I. Excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous, as you can imagine. And so I went there to speak to her. My idea was to catch her when she was getting off of work, so we could have a little bit of privacy at her shop where we could discuss this. So when she came out of the shop, I talked to her, confronted her in the parking lot, and said, look, we need to discuss these medical bills. I need the paperwork, the insurance, the invoice, and the doctor's prescription that we've been talking about for the last 2 months. She stated that she had to go pick up Gregory. So I said, look, Ann, I've waited a couple hours to talk to you. Now, we're going to have to get this straightened out today. I'm not going to wait any longer. We got a court monitoring date coming up. So she said, jump in the truck or her van, excuse me, and we can talk on the way to pick up Gregory. She had to pick him up from the babysitter. So we left. From the minute we started talking, it was an argument. And eventually the argument turned into a fiercer argument, and it became stop. We were stopped at a stop sign, and she just basically stood there or sat there in the seat, and we were just arguing, sitting there at the stop sign. And the argument eventually became physical, and I shot her.
Let's stop right there. What do you mean it became physical?
Well, she kind of turned in the seat, and I brought up a couple of issues, and she was very upset, which is typically what happened whenever we tried to have a conversation about this. And I guess she tried slapping me. I don't guess, she did try slapping me, but it wasn't nothing. It wasn't nothing that was harmful to me or was going to hurt me. I just really lost my temper. And I'm sorry for the actions that I took. I wish I would have never done it.
I thought, what actions did you take?
I just grabbed her arm. I tried just grabbing her arms, and I got slapped again, and I just lost control, I guess, is the best explanation I can give for it. And just a long series of aggravations.
Well, you keep saying you lost your self-control, but you're not telling me what you did.
Well, like I was suggesting, we were just having type of a struggle between us. I grabbed her arm, her hand, and she had slapped me again, and I don't know. I'd never really done that before. I'd never really lost control with her. This isn't the first time we've had this same type of scenario, and I'd always remain calm. And I guess I was to the point where something had to change, and I didn't really know what else to do.
How did she get ligature marks around her neck?
Well, I've done a lot of things that day that I'm not very proud of. I'm actually ashamed of, and I would like to say that I'm sorry, and I apologize to the Erdy family for what I did and the grief I caused them.
How
I
did she
hope you
get
listen.
marked? How did she get ligature marks around her neck?
After I shot her, uh, her foot fell off the brake and the van started rolling forward. I just slammed the gear shift into park. So when running the ditch, I had no idea that she was going to die, really. And we was going down Borderline Road, and I was heading towards the hospital. And
Whoa. At what point did you think she wasn't going to die? She was shot in the forehead between the eyes.
I had no idea that she was shot in the forehead. It was a complete surprise to me when I saw the picture when I was in the parish jail and the district attorney brought us the picture. It was the first thing I asked my attorney. I couldn't believe it, but anyway, I thought she was shot in the stomach or the chest. And I headed down Borderline Road and she said, please help me. I said, Ann, I'm taking you to the hospital as fast as I can. And I didn't get down Borderline Road. She aspirated.
I'm gonna stop you there for a moment.
Right.
All right. No one shot in the face between the eyes. I'm talking, or asking you anything. It didn't happen that way. Why did you have a gun? Why did you have a gun, and how and when did you acquire the weapon?
The reason I had the gun was I had a restaurant and a bar in Ponchatoula, and I had been broken into a couple of times, and I carried money in and out morning and evening, and I just thought it was in my best interest at that time, to acquire a gun. And the people who were one of the vendors in my restaurant, we got into a discussion, and he had a gun, and he said that I could use his till I got my own. This was, I don't know, a couple of months before this incident happened. And that's why I had the gun.
Why did you have it on you during your interaction with your ex-wife? Why didn't you have it on your person as opposed to in your vehicle, in your business? Why were you armed with it when you had your interaction with your wife, ex-wife?
Well, it was a very small 25 caliber pistol, and I usually just stuck it in my back pocket in front of my billfold and carried it with me. And I really done it so much, I just carried it with me almost 24 hours a day, except when I was in my business, I would put it in my office. And I never really thought about it. I just had it with me.
Whose vehicle were you in when Ann was killed?
Excuse me, say that.
Whose vehicle were you all in when she was shot and killed?
The vehicle, I guess you could say, was Ann's. I paid for it, but it was for Gregory.
Right, but she had the vehicle. It was not your vehicle.
Correct.
On a day-to-day basis, she had the vehicle. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, after you shot her, and again, you never explained how she got ligature marks around her neck, but it's okay. I'm not going to go into that anymore. But after you shot her, what happened next?
Okay, well, that's where I was going. We was going down Borderline Road after I shot her, and she asked me, she said, please help me. And I said, I'm taking
We may have lost our connection, stand by. Hey, everybody, I just wanted to let you know, we just got an update from the folks at the penitentiary. Their computer that they use for these hearings is the statewide network has pushed through an update that they have no control over. And so their computer is updating and rebooting. And as soon as that process is complete, they'll recommit. So we'll get back as soon as we can. Okay, thank you.
Did you turn that one off?
No, it's actually, I think it's close.
All right, see y'all are back. Can y'all hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
We can hear you, but you're
Okay.
just on your laptop now, Ms. Renata, so you're not on the big screen.
Oh, well, that's probably better for us. Just stand by a minute. We had some folks that left the room. We're going to bring them back in and then we'll get started or resume. Thank y'all for working through that and for everybody's patience. So, Mr. Halls, we're ready to resume where we left off. Mrs. Jackson?
All right, Mr. Halls, could you just tell us after the homicide, what did you do then? You enlist some people to help you after you killed your ex-wife. So tell us a little bit about that. What happened?
Immediately after it happened, you know, I really just didn't know what to do. I rode around in just a little bit, kind of heading towards Ponchatoula, and I came up with the idea, no matter how foolish was, that I would just see if I could get Bike to take the van to New Orleans. Bike was a friend of mine. He did maintenance work around my building and different things. And we've been knowing each other for quite a while and had been friends. And I stopped at his house and I asked him, and I told him I needed to talk to him. When he come out to the van, I told him what I did. And we got in the van. He said he would help me. We rode around for a few minutes. And I explained to him what I wanted him to do. And he said he would do it, but he wouldn't drive the van to New Orleans with the body in the van. So we put her body out in a little wooded area right there outside of Ponchatoula along the interstate somewhere. We was just riding around out in the country. I didn't even really know where we was at. And he took the van to New Orleans, and 2 days later we went back and buried the body.
Was there a female also involved in, we'll call it cover-up?
I didn't hear the last little bit you said there, but you asked if there was a female. There was two women that were involved. One was my girlfriend, and the other was a lady that worked at my restaurant. And I just asked them to basically give me an alibi, and they did. And while we're here, I would like to say that I don't know if they're listening or whatever, but I apologize for bringing them into this. They didn't do anything other than just try to be a friend to me. And I put them in a very bad situation and caused them and their family a lot of grief. And I'm sorry for that.
Well, let's talk about the last 30 years, Mr. Hobbs. Tell us how you spent the last 30 years. I see that you have taken a lot of NCCER courses, HVAC, electrical. I show that you have been the electrician at Hunt. You've been a reentry mentor, also completed 100 hours of pre-release. What other programs have you been involved in, Mr. Hall, since your incarceration?
Other than what you mentioned, most of it has been religious programs. I took the diaconate classes for the Catholic Church. And it's basically what if you was on the street that you would take if you were going to become a deacon for the Catholic Church. It's kind of like the beginning part of that. And I graduated from the NOBTS ministry with a bachelor's degree in 2005. And
okay, 2005?
I think so. It's been quite a while ago now, but I think we graduated in 2005. I finished the course in about 2004. And I've been served as a Catholic peer minister here at Angola and while I was at Hunt's.
Okay. Are you involved in any clubs or organizations within the prison besides reentry?
I'm a member of DC, Dale Carnegie, and we do various things like Christmas program for the people in the TU which is a treatment unit for, I guess these are mentally challenged people, and do various other things in the prison. And a Point Lookout Committee, I've participated in that when I've been at Angola since probably 2004 and still do today.
And what exactly do you do with Point Lookout?
Inmates that pass away here at Angola and do not have either means or family to claim the body and take care of them, we provide a religious service and a burial at Point Lookout, and in a very dignified manner.
And what's your role in that process?
Generally, I have just a pallbearer. Sometimes I'm just general support, but I've been recently asked to conduct the services at Point Lookout.
You've never conducted services before. You just
No,
serve pallbearer, and what else?
No, I never have. I've been available, but there's generally been several people that have taken on that role and really pretty good at it. And right now it's kind of short staffed because of the COVID thing. It's limited people that go. So I was asked to perform some services in the future if I was available, and I said I would.
As I looked at your programs, Mr. Halls, the thing that struck me most, and I'm not going to discount your religious participation, but most of your programs have been geared toward vocational trades, HVAC, electrical certifications. But I haven't seen a whole lot of programs that address the person. You know, I haven't seen programs that are designed for self-reflection. Can you tell us why you've not taken those kinds of programs?
I'd say those programs have got really popular in the last 10 years and provided pretty extensively here at Angola and both at Hunts when I was there. When I was at Hunts, I facilitated the programs. So
what programs did you facilitate?
They were mostly religious, but they were self-help programs, probably online with Thinking for a Change. And
listen at me. You know, generally, people who have done Thinking for a Change, for instance, would have a certificate of completion for that program. And I didn't see that in your file. I haven't seen a lot of, again, those kinds of programs that get to you as an individual as opposed to you as an electrician or air conditioning repair person. While those are useful tools if you are successful, they really don't address what it was that would cause someone to shoot his ex-wife between the eyes, knowing that he had a 6-year-old helpless child, totally dependent on his mom, and yet you were able to do that. And I don't see anything in your submittal to this board that shows that you worked on those issues that would cause you to commit such a terrible crime. And I'd like to know why you have not been involved in that kind of programming.
okay. I mean, the only really answer that I can have for that is, you know, I was at the State Police Barracks until 2013-14, and there was nothing offered there. When I went to Hunts and I became a Catholic peer minister, I didn't participate in the Thinking of Change for a Change. I kind of use that as an example. That's the type of programs that they were being offered there, and they were through the religious department, and I was facilitating them. I didn't actually take them. I was kind of teaching them. But I guess I was a facilitator. And when I came to, when I left there and I came to Angola and got involved in reentry, it wasn't too much later, the COVID thing came to, all over, and basically we were shut down here. I had been on the waiting list for Thinking for a Change for quite a while, and victim awareness. And I'm still on the backlog for it. I just recently took anger management. But
Okay, let me ask you, says that why did you leave the state police barracks in 2013?
No other reason than I didn't get a write-up or any time of disciplinary action. I just, it was not a very good place for me for the reason there's not too much to do at the state police barracks. There's strictly work and a very limited hobby shop. Gus Mays, I would say, is a friend of mine who I used to work for, was at Hunt's, and he needed an electrician. And so I asked to be sent back to DOC, and I went to Hunt's and went to work for Gus at.
How long were you at the barracks?
Probably 6-7 years. I don't know exactly, probably 2007 to 2013. I think that sounds right.
So you've not done victim awareness, you've not done Thinking for a Change. Were you involved in the use of drugs or alcohol during the time that you committed this crime? Was alcohol a factor?
No, ma'am, I never have.
You never had an issue with alcohol or drugs? Did you drink at all?
I drank quite extensively in my younger years, but I was probably about 25 and I quit drinking. I think I was probably about 25 or 26. I quit drinking. I didn't, and I've never used drugs.
I show that you have a low risk assessment. You've had 12 write-ups. The last one was in 2014. What was that for?
Unsanitary practices, which were what it evolved to is apparently my bed was unmade, or I'm not really sure. I believe someone put some reading material that I had given them on my bed. There was nothing specific on the write-up. I might have left something out of shape underneath my bed, my shoes or something, but.
Well, I'm looking at your disciplinary record right now. There is a specific write-up number for unsanitary practices, but your write-up is for Rule 5, which is an aggravated disobedience. So you want to talk to us about that?
Yes, I sure will. I'd left the dorm that morning rather early, and I was told that the colonel made an announcement in the dorm that they were going to do a shakedown, or not a shakedown, but a inspection of our dormitory later that morning, so to get our bed areas in shape. And I was not in the dorm at the time. And I think 70 some people got write-ups that morning, and I was one of them. When I went to court, I explained the situation, and he asked me to sign a paper that I was pleading guilty and that he would result in a reprimand. And I think that's what the outcome was.
Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. Holmes?
So Larry has been a trustee. Sorry, we're having to move our camera around to meet our needs right now. A Min A since 2006, and as you stated, he's been to the state police barracks and then to Hunt for a while, and then back to us. Since he's been back to us in 2015, came back in as reentry, went through some schooling, and as well had been a lead and then also a mentor in the electric shop. He, for the last couple of years, has been working in our TV repair shop. In the last several years of his incarceration here, we've not had any problems with him.
Thank you, Warden. And Mr. Halls, again, I know you apologize for your actions, but tell us how you think your crime impacted your ex-wife's family and other people. What impact do you think your crime has had?
I can hardly imagine the grief that I've caused them, especially Shirley and Julius. I know it had a terrible impact on my son as well. I know that, it's probably hard to understand, but what happened was the last thing that I wanted to happen, because I needed Ann in our situation with Gregory. I thought to take care of Gregory as much as I think or thought that she needed me to take care of the financial aspects of this. And I apologize to the family before and the victims, but words can't really ever compensate for taking action such as I did. Just since then, I've tried to do things that were positive and help others, and hope that by my actions and my lack of any further disciplinary actions or problems through the years, it's kind of showed that I've tried to be a better person and tried to change and be different than what I was then.
And I was about to wrap it up, but there was something that you said that kind of struck me. Ann was responsible for loving and taking care of that little boy who, through no fault of his own, had this terrible disease. And you only saw yourself as the bill payer. I don't hear any personal attachment to that child. It seems as if you left that to Ann, and your concern was just how much it was costing. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. How would you address that?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry if it sounds like that. I don't want it to be. I was involved with Gregory's life. I had him every other weekend, and we did what we could. It was kind of limited, but the New Orleans Zoo and different things that came up through time. I did spend time with him. I was very involved in taking him to the hospital when he was required, and physical therapy at Oshner's for years. And I was a busy person, just like Ann was busy in her beauty shop, and we didn't interact as much as we probably should have in that regard together. But I was always, if Ann ever needed me to do anything, I was always there to take care of it, I guess.
Thank you, Mrs. Renata. That's all right.
All right, thank you. Mr. Roche has a question.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Halls. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good,
Nervous, but fine.
good. How would you answer this allegation? This is an allegation that was made that you broke into Ann's van in the middle of the night. You hid in the back of the van and waited for her to enter. Some accounts waited as long as 12 to 14 hours. You attempted to strangle her and put a zip tie around her neck. That was probably because of the ligaments on her neck that Ms. Jackson was asking about. Then you shot her between the eyes. What would you say to that?
Well, I think it was brought out in trial that she died from the gunshot wound, and
It's just.
So
I-
answer my question. What would your response to that allegation?
It just wasn't, it's not true.
That's all I asked.
Okay.
There was also a document that you were paying alimony to your wife and child support for your son. Am I correct?
No, I did not pay alimony. I just paid child support.
So you did pay child support. At the time of your ex-wife's death, did you have any back child support?
I don't believe so. It's been 30 years ago, but we just had a monitoring date about 90 days previous, and it, everything was up to date as far as I know. And
My report says that you were $11,000 behind in child support and business expenses. So
Well,
probably that was medical expenses.
you're kind of breaking up a little bit if you.
Okay, listen up, Mr. House. There is some evidence in my report that you were behind $11,000 in child support and business expenses. What is your response to that?
It's just not correct. I don't believe that. There may have been something that outstanding, but it was nothing. I went to court pretty regularly, and believe me, if I got 3 months behind in my child support, which I did on several occasions, which is $1,200, it's the most that I know that it's ever been. We went to court, and I probably would have been in the parish jail if it wouldn't have been paid, but it was always taken care of.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. I have just one question. Did you have a gambling problem?
No, ma'am, I don't believe I did. I did gamble at the time. I had a poker game in my restaurant and bar at the time, but I don't believe it was a gambling.
That's all. There was just an indication somewhere in the report that you may have had a gambling problem. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so we'll hear from the folks that have joined us who indicated they'd like to speak. Could we hear from Mr. Pitchford, excuse me. So would you stand up to the podium?
Yes, I would just like to speak in support of Larry. Known Larry for the 20 years in prison ministry. During that time, I found him a faithful attendee, faithful to all the things that I asked him. And he was always instrumental in helping us. So that is my use. I would offer my support.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, sir. Miss Julia Mudd.
Hi, I am an attorney. I'm put together the packet that I hope made its way to you all. And thank you for taking the time to consider Mr. Hull's application. I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here as support because I'm licensed in Kentucky and I am scheduled to take the bar exam not until February. So I did put the packet together for Mr. Hull's, and in speaking with him, I think we have had some problems this morning with the connection, and I know that he's very nervous. He has time and time again expressed remorse to myself about what happened, about toward not just for what he did, but also in how that affected the family. And I do feel that is genuine on his part. When somebody goes to prison for a lengthy sentence, such as a life sentence, they've got a lot of choices. And some people, and I'm sure some of them have been in front of this board, they choose to not do anything. And that is something that, Mr. Hull's has never done. He has never chosen to do nothing. What he did as soon as he started enrolling in programs. And I understand that perhaps there's not as many programs for various reasons as some might have, but he has a lot of I think that the way that he addressed what was going on inside of him was through a religious exploration and through his faith. He has a bachelor's degree, which took him 4 years. He also has an associate's degree, which from the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, which, would normally take 2 years. And not just that, he stayed busy the entire time he was there. He's mentored others, and I understand, a lot of this is work. He liked to stay busy. He liked to have work to do, and that's, where his skills were. But he's also mentored others. He's shown great empathy in his participation with the Lookout program. What struck me the most about what Mr. Hulls told me in discussing his journey was that he was able to, through becoming an inmate minister, was able to minister to people who were mentally ill in the prison, people who were in solitary confinement, people who were in the medical or mental health units. And he described to me that really was a turning point for him. He has been to church his whole life, but those things were things that really affected him. So the other choices that he made, in addition to those sorts of things, he could have gotten in a lot more trouble than he did. Even though he has a few write-ups, they're fairly minor write-ups, which I think that is obvious from the punishments or lack thereof that he received in exchange for those write-ups. None of them were acts of violence in any way. He has so much family and community support, and I hope that my being here as a supporter isn't indicative to the board in any way that he doesn't have other people, because we've had several people, lined up who were willing to talk, and many people who could have been here instead of me today. But because of the situation, you get me instead. But we do have a number of letters. I think that there were 12 attached to the packet that I submitted. And it's my understanding as well that a number of letters were submitted directly to the board. There's no way through words for him to express, or for me to express on his behalf, what the family must have gone through and still goes through. And I know that he appreciates that aspect of it, that he understands that that's something that he can't take back. As much as he may want to. I think that he's done so much in order to try to change what he can about himself. And I know that some might try to do that in various ways. And I think his, was through faith. And so I think that by trying to show that, he can be a productive member of society, that he does have jobs that he's capable of doing. He's taught others how to do that. He's very intelligent, very capable. He's a person who can do so many things. A person who's capable of, ministering to others at this point. And so I hope that the board will consider all of those things and all of the letters that were in support. I know that he has support there in the room in Baton Rouge today as well. And on behalf of all of us, then we would ask that the court consider his commutation today.
Great, thank you, ma'am. And I want to acknowledge that we do have the Parole Project here who wish to speak, but we've run out of spaces to allow him to speak unless there's any particular questions that the board may have of the Parole Project. Mr. Gus May is here joining us by Zoom. Is there some remarks you'd like to make, Mr. May? I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I met Larry at Angola. He worked for me for quite some time in the refrigeration department. He came to the department knowing electrical, but he learned by himself the HVAC, and he trained himself through materials that I gave him and others made available to him, and he did a great job on it. Later on, when he left the barracks, he came and worked for me at Hunt Correctional. And unlike most people in the prison, I was not in security. I was in maintenance. So the inmates that worked for me were much more like employees than they were inmates, so to speak. I did have an opportunity to meet a lot of inmates. Larry Hulls is one of two that I'm willing to speak for. And I knew him. He told me about his case. It was just like what you folks just revealed. He always presented himself as a fair and honest man. He was even-tempered, controlled. I think that living in prison is an exercise in self-control. Generally among that population, there's people that can hurt you, and you go to great lengths to behave accordingly. But I think he has a lot to offer the community. I stated in my letter he'd be welcome in my home at any time. And again, I think he's paid his price. I think that you folks would be quite in the clear to give him his parole.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your remarks. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I will hear the opposition now, and I'd like to state for the record, we do have a letter in the record from Senator Bodie White expressing very strong opposition to a favorable recommendation. So could we hear from Mr. Mark Bodie?
I didn't come up here to speak about the trial of the case, but to listen to Mr. Hall explain his version of it, how was it the trial? There's everything is all on the internet. The picture he painted was a completely different picture than reality. It was definitely premeditated, and it's been 14 hours in our van before she make sure that all understand. Now, Larry Hall spent 30 years in prison for that. When he wants to get out, thinks he should get out. After 30 years, he thinks he's paid his debt to society. But my mom and dad, it's been Gregory, it's been arrested hit like him. Me and my sister, yes, we have a lot of people in the family. We all have to go without answer. That's not a justice system. If he can get out after 30 years, walk away, we have to spend the rest of our life. Please tell me that you're not going to let him back out.
Sir, thank you. Mr. Brett Morrison?
My name's Brett Morrison. I'm the nephew. Mine's better to write it down when you're emotionally attached to something. I'd like to lead off with a quote by Rose King. It has been said that time heals all wounds. I do not agree. The wounds remain. In time, the mind, protecting its sanity, covers them with scar tissue, and the pain lessens, but it is never gone. This statement holds true for me and my family. I was 6 years old when my aunt died. She was murdered by Larry Holtz. That was 30 years ago, almost to the day. Now here me and my family sit being asked to relive one of the most devastating moments in our lives. She was my favorite aunt. She was so full of life, love, and laughter all the time. But now, 30 years later, I can only recall one single memory of her. Our family is forever fractured. My uncle barely talked about it without getting choked up. My mom still to this day has nightmares. She goes to counseling to cope with grief. Imagine the fear and nightmares she'll have if you release this man today. My kids, much like my other family members, will never know her. We can't watch old home movies or even tell old stories without a constant reminder that she was violently and selfishly taken from us. I read in court documents that she was killed over $11,000 in child support. What kind of person can kill the mother of their child, a special needs child, over $11,000? In my opinion, there's no redemption or rehabilitation for someone who can so casually commit these crimes. My cousin never got to feel his mother's embrace again. My grandparents never got to hold their daughter again. My mom and my uncle never got to hear their sisters laugh again. Instead, we were all sentenced to a lifetime of grief over losing a loved one in such a brutal manner. She wasn't terminally ill. She didn't die in some freak accident. She was intentionally and violently taken from us. In closing, I'd like to leave you with one final quote. Matthew chapter 4, verse 5. Blessed are the ones who mourn, that they will be comforted. I ask that this will help comfort my still mourning family today by ensuring that Mr. Holes never gets released. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Belzer from the DA's office.
Yes, members of the board. On behalf of the District Attorney's Office for the 21st Judicial District, again, we would like to voice our opposition to any grant of clemency or pardon for Mr. Holes. This, again, was not my case. This one predates me by some years, but this was a case or a murder that happened over finances, over money, in the financial care of a quadriplegic son, and ultimately ended or resulted in that son being deprived of a primary caregiver. Based on the facts we've heard this morning, he then he refused to help her by his own testimony here when she was begging for help after strangling her, and then eventually shot her to death, and then tried to cover it up, enlisting others to help him in disposing of her body, enlisting in others to try to provide him with an alibi with this, and then leaves her to rot in an unmarked grave. I would submit to this panel that this was an attempt to make her disappear, which again has been the result of what he's been doing here today. Again, you hear nothing about her in all of this. It's always about him, about what he's done, about how to affect him. I find it interesting that the programs he mentioned that he has been doing in DOC, he describes them as self-help, which is exactly what their purpose is. This is nothing but an attempt to help himself, checking off the appropriate boxes, again, to help himself. I'm not hearing anything remorseful about what he has done, anything directed towards his ex-wife, towards the family, such that would try to make this up or give an explanation as to why it happened. This was a heinous offense, one that state had to enlist the help of Mary Mannheim in order to help identify this body, this victim. And it is a heinous offense that has had lasting impact on this family, as you've heard today, one that this defendant should not be allowed to just escape from. So again, on behalf of the District Attorney's Office, we are opposed to the grant of any kind of clemency or pardon for him. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Halls, is there a statement you'd like to make before I turn it over to your attorney, Mr. Hamilton?
The only thing that I'd like to say is that, despite their feelings, I don't have nothing but empathy for the family. And in our relationship, as long as I knew them, they were we were all cordial to one another, and I'm sorry that I had to put them through this, and I understand how they feel. And I wish they would find some forgiveness for me and mercy in their hearts. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you. Board members, can you hear me okay? Okay. Good afternoon. I'm serving as an attorney for Mr. Halls. On behalf of him and his supporters, I urge you to grant his application and recommend a commutation of his sentence. I want to emphasize that he deeply regrets his crime, for which he has spent 30 years trying to atone. He is completely rehabilitated, and he would make a great contribution to society outside of prison if he is allowed to enjoy his freedom again. You didn't hear from Jay Jackson, under whose supervision Mr. Halls has worked as a peer minister, but I think, as Mr. Jackson would have told you, Mr. Halls has incorporated his religious teachings into his daily life. Mr. Halls has demonstrated his commitment to ministry and serving his church community while in prison. And this commitment is an example of his moral rehabilitation and his commitment to turning his life around. He's obtained his bachelor's and associate's degrees from the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, as you heard. You heard from Gus May, who is also one of Mr. Hall's supporters. Mr. May is the retired Department of Corrections facility maintenance manager who supervised Mr. Halls for 8 years. And he told you that as he put in his statement, he would, the entire time he supervised Mr. Halls, he was an exemplary employee who was eager to learn, always got along with others, always volunteered for extra work, and never presented any disciplinary problems. Mr. Hall's employment while in prison demonstrates his work ethic and his general character. As you've heard, he's highly skilled as an electrician and in refrigeration. He has many marketable skills. He is a hardworking and he is a mentor to others. You also heard from my colleague, Ms. Julia Mudd, who explained the various positive choices Mr. Halls has made since the tragic day when he took his ex-wife's life. She also discussed his faith journey, his work ministering to other incarcerated men, his strong work history, and you heard from Mr. Halls himself. Other than the crime for which he is incarcerated, Mr. Halls has a clean criminal history. You know better than I do how unusual it is to have an applicant appear before you whose criminal history is so clean. If not for that single crime, I truly believe Mr. Hall's life would have turned out very differently because of his character. He's avoided trouble while in prison, and he has had no disciplinary infractions for the past 8 years. He has a low Tiger score, and the risk of recidivism for him is entirely negligible. He's been an exemplary trustee for several years. He became a Class A trustee, I believe it was 18 years ago. As you can tell from the statements of support and the records submitted to you, Mr. Halls has garnered significant achievements while incarcerated. He's demonstrated exceptional leadership abilities, and he is a stellar example of moral rehabilitation taking place in prison. Those aren't just my words, those are the words of assistant wardens who praised his service as a mentor in the reentry and rehabilitation programs at Angola, which you can find in the packet submitted on his behalf. The assistant warden for programs wrote letters of commendation extolling those character attributes 3 years in a row. I truly respect the difficult job you all have. You are in the redemption business, and you have the hard task of seeing past the worst aspects of a person's life and trying to discern whether they have the capacity for redemption and whether they are worthy of a chance to redeem themselves in the free world. I hope you will see that in Mr. Halls, that he has the capacity for redemption. Mr. Mirabella said in an earlier presentation that you like to take into account who a person was, who they were, and what they've accomplished and who they are now. I think if you take that into account with Mr. Halls, you see that he has turned his life around. I know that's a phrase you hear a lot. I've heard it a lot today, repeated so often it takes on the cadence of cliche, but often the truth sounds like a cliche, and this is a man who has turned his life around. Judge Jackson, you said earlier that you like to measure rehabilitation by what a person has done for others. I think if you look at his record, you'll see that Mr. Halls has really applied himself to helping others through his ministry. If Mr. Halls is allowed to leave prison, he will continue to be a model citizen and contribute positively to society. He has the full support of his family. I believe his mother and brother and sister have traveled to appear before you today. The Parole Project has accepted him as a client in its reentry program, and his brother, who lives in Louisiana, has agreed to support him with housing when he completes that program. We all have high hopes for what he will accomplish and achieve in the free world because he is remorseful, he's taken responsibility for his crime, and his achievements and character demonstrate that he would positively contribute to society if released. I again urge you to grant his application and recommend a commutation of sentence. Unless you have any questions for me, that is all. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. I don't see any questions. The board prepared to vote. Mrs. Jackson will be voting first. Mr. Halls.
Prior to being on the board, I was a judge for 28 years in Baton Rouge. And so I've had a lot of experience talking to and more importantly, listening to people to discern who they really are. So I listen with my head and I listen with my heart. And hopefully with those two things coming into conversion, I get a pretty clear picture of the person before me. You have, on the surface, done well in prison. It's not unusual for us to get inmates who've been in jail even longer than you, with even fewer write-ups than you. We have had inmates who have done phenomenally well while in the institution. We've had inmates who have served others exponentially more than they have tried to help themselves. The first thing that struck me when I looked at your packet is it was heavy on vocational stuff, electrical skills, HVAC, teaching those skills in reentry program, but really light on the kind of rehabilitative programs that get to the heart of who you are as a human being. And being able to truly accept responsibility for the actions, to truly understand the impact that your crime has had on other people. And as I said, I didn't see a lot of those kinds of programs. I know you say you've done some faith-based things, and I don't discount that, but that's not the same thing as doing the hard work of self-analysis. And I just don't think that you've done that. You know, some people will be good on the outside, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on the inside. And that's my perception of you today. You know, when I ask the offenders to tell me what happened, it's not that I don't have all the information. It's right there before me. And I spend a lot of time combing through all the details. The reason I ask is to determine how honest a person is going to be. For me, that's a mark of rehabilitation. If you own up, you don't try to sugarcoat it, you don't try to minimize it, you own it. And you didn't do that today. You almost blamed Ann because she attacked you. She was hitting you and you just lost it. You glossed over Mr. Roche's question about what about the testimony that you hid out in her van for hours, waiting for her, lying in wait for her. You didn't own that either. And to me, that shows a level of really manipulative behavior on your part, not genuine remorse. And so for me, I just don't think you're there. I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And it's not in reentry. It's not in being the prison electrician or working on air conditioning systems. It's on you. and coming to terms with what you did. When I think about that little boy, his mom was his loving caregiver, and you took that from him. It just speaks volumes to me about the person that you were then, and I don't see a lot to change that today. So I'm going to encourage you to start working on you. Air conditioning and the electrical system will take care of itself. Work on you. But my vote today would be to deny your application because of a lack of rehabilitative programming, strong opposition from the victim's family and the district attorney's office, and the circumstances of the crime. So my vote today is to deny. I'm just one vote, but I'm going to. Mr. Lachey?
Mr. Halls, I'm not going to repeat everything Ms. Jackson said, but I echo every word she said. You were not truthful today. You didn't take responsibility. And for the same reasons as Judge Jackson, I'm going to deny your request today.
Mr. Marable?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Halls, as Mr. Roche and Judge Jackson said, I'm not going to reiterate everything that happened today. And we do look at who you are today as opposed to who you are then. But the crime itself, the nature of the crime, is always a factor that we consider. Sometimes we give more weight to it than other times. This is one of those times. Your crime, what you took away, and what you took away from your son, what you took away from your wife's family, you don't seem to understand it. You don't seem to have accepted that. I don't think you were completely honest with us today. I don't think you're completely honest with yourself. And I think until you look inwardly and make those determinations, I'm not prepared to vote to let you out. So my vote today, likewise, is to deny, primarily because you lack the empathy to understand the significance of what you did.
Thank you, Mr. Marable. Mr. Britton?
To Halls, I listened very, very intently, and you have done a terrific job while you've been in prison, and on the inside, you're doing a good job. But bottom line, and the first thing that jumped out at me is the same thing that jumped out at Ms. Jackson. I saw all kind of classes, electrical and stuff like that, but I didn't see any programming for yourself, victim awareness and, things of that nature. I mean, I think you headed in the right direction, and you may get there soon, but right now I just can't vote to let you out, vote to deny.
All right, Mr. Hall, so you've received 4 votes to deny your application for clemency, so that is the outcome of today's proceedings. Your application's been denied, sir. Good luck.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there you have it. This case was very special, and sound off in the comments on how you felt. Do you think that the board was right by by denying his parole, or do you think that he should have been granted? Let us know in the comments. That concludes our show.